And don't forget, this is being recorded, just so you know, because we want to try to post it for everybody. So you'll want to keep your videos off. All right, I'm going to share my screen so we can get started. Okay. All right, so we shall begin. Let me get this presentation mode. And so thank you everybody for jumping on this morning. I know there's probably a lot of different questions. There's been so many things that have been in flux, especially the last month of school. And so for that, I just want to just apologize right off the get-go. It's just been a very convoluted process in trying to figure out how we're moving forward with reopening Newburyport High School. And so at least we do have, you know, certain components now that are definitely confirmed. But then ultimately just recognizing that ideally that we're able to continue to make an adjustments as we move forward into the school year. But a big part of today's presentation, so it's just an overview of how we're starting, but then to really get into our safety protocols so that all of you, when you're coming into the building, just know there's been a lot of changes to school, and school is going to look, or the building is going to look very, very different. Just in terms of things that we've typically done. And so that's a big thing for us to impart. And then next week when we do our student orientations, you'll definitely get a feel for that. And so Mr. Testa is going to get into the nitty gritty with the safety protocols, but then he'll be able to share with you in the presentation the different signage that is now around the building so that we're all kind of moving in the same direction, especially during passing times. So here's our focus today, just to give you an overview of what the student orientations are going to focus on. Then our schedule moving forward. Also student technology, which is going to be very important. Building safety protocols, which is what Mr. Testa is going to do. And then athletics. To get into that, that's actually starting to get into more clarity as well. So there's been a lot of meetings that Mr. Hodson will talk about between the principals and the athletic directors of the Cal, but it looks like things are really starting to take better shape there. We will not bother with this. It looks like there's about 70 of you on the call, so we can just take questions at the end, just through people raising their hand versus you submitting it in the form. Okay, so the objectives of the student orientations, which will be next week. So each grade has a specific day that they've been assigned that they're going to be able to come to the building. And big piece is learning and practicing the school safety protocols, because it is a little bit different how the high school is set up versus the other schools in district, where students for the most part are pretty much staying within their classrooms for the day. Whereas at the high school, we made a decision to definitely stay with our regular schedule. And so students would be walking around the building. So we do have a lot of different safety protocols that are in place, and the building is now decked out with a lot of signage to make things very clear for everybody, including the adults in the building. We've also set it up with Sullivan Studios that on the day that you do come in for your grade level orientation, there's going to be school ID pictures taken that day as well. You're going to have the opportunity to run through your schedule, so meet your teachers, and they'll talk about different expectations for the classes, but also really get into remote learning expectations as well. But really get into the expectations of student work from home, and then also when you're on site. And then we're also asking that students do bring a backpack with them. So that way, so if there is a textbook for a class, that you're able to take that with you for the day. Okay. All right, let's see here. So definitely do not forget to bring your backpack. And so with the schedule, we had 2 presentations last Thursday for your parents. And so this is pretty much the same presentation, and maybe some of you had jumped onto those as well. But anyhow, how this is going to work. So grade 9, your orientation day is Tuesday, September 15th. Grade 10 is September 16th. Grade 11 is the 17th, and grade 12 is the 18th. Now, what we've done for these orientation dates is we have staggered it by the cohorts. So we have A through K. So your arrival time and registration is going to be from 8 to 8:30. And at that time, when you're coming in, and you see we've tried to stagger the arrivals as well, just to spread out students. But what you are going to receive, you'll receive your Clipper Compass. But then also within that Clipper Compass is going to be your most up-to-date schedule. So there still continues to be some adjustments to schedules, and we will be getting a communication out later this week, because we also have some staff that have gone on some temporary leave that was available to them. And so there are different teachers that some students will have based on, that are different from the schedules that were pushed out a few weeks ago. And so we just want to make you aware, of those changes as well. And so that there'll be a note. So for anybody who has a different teacher for the start of the school year, that will be notified later this week. And then we have dismissal for the A through K will be 12:05, and then L through Z coming in at 10:45 for their arrival and registration, and then they would be leaving at 2:50 p.m. Oh, and just to kind of get into a little bit more detail, what's going to happen is after each arrival, so A through K, after the arrival time and registration, half of those students would be going to get their pictures taken, and it'll be a Q&A opportunity with the guidance staff, while the other half of the A through K will be with Mr. Testa and I. We'll be going over a presentation, actually very similar to this, on the safety protocols for the building. And then that takes about an hour and a half, those 2 stations, and then you're going to get to run through your schedule. And while you are running through your schedule, that's when A through K is running through their schedule. That is when L through Z will be coming in to run through the stations, such as the safety protocols and getting their pictures taken. So it was a way just to limit number of students in the halls, but really with the focus of getting used to the different protocols that are in place and new routines for the building as well. And then also really a big piece for the teachers to really focus on, all right, the class expectations. And so your schedule for when you are working at home and when you're at school is the same thing. So the bell schedule is going to be the same. The teachers have been practicing last week, and they'll continue to practice into this week. So Googling in with the students who are at home alongside the students that are in front of them. So the schedule is going to be the same. So if you are scheduled to be at home, you would be logging into your on a Monday, you'd be logging into your first period class, and the teacher will be taking attendance and then running their lesson with you on the screen. And then they may have kind of the chunk, the middle part of the lesson might be opportunity for independent work or collaborative work, or sometimes the teacher may keep everybody together for the full chunk, but then providing a closure with everybody together as well, so that everybody can really stay synchronous with the learning. So for the students on site and for the students at home as well. So this is your schedule. So right now, the Wednesdays, there would be no in-person. And this would be when teachers are really setting more of the learning outcomes for the week ahead and clarifying any of the assignments that would be going on. And then we also have on Tuesday and Friday, you would have your EFG periods, and then you would have your Clipper period. And that was a block that we had created last year when we were redoing the schedule. And a big part of the Clipper period was about, since we were losing the study halls, was to be able to provide time for students to work on assignments, but also have access to their teachers. And so we're still going to be moving forward with that, albeit it'll obviously be different. So we'll be taking advantage more of kind of the remote piece there for that support. But then we've also been able to work out with the teachers as well that on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they'll be staying at the building till 3:10, and students can make by appointment an opportunity for in-person extra help at the school. Okay, so this is the schedule, the weekly schedule that we have. And so again, it's the same for whether you are at home or you are at school. And you will notice that if you are in the building, that there will be we'll have 3 lunch periods. And Mr. Testa will get into that a little bit. And what that allows us to do is have around 70 to 80 students in the cafeteria at one time for those lunches, to make it a lot more manageable. And here's just to show you that for when you are in person, that this is what the lunch schedule would look like. And there's ample time so that there can be plenty of space in between the lunches for the desks to get wiped down and cleaned before the next group comes in. Now, last week so from 2 weeks ago when the school committee voted on us coming back to school, there was work that happened between the teachers and the school committee on creating a memorandum of understanding. So that created an adjustment to our schedule again. And so how this is going to work, September 21st to October 2nd, our academic schedule is going to stay with remote instruction. So we're not going to launch in initially right to the hybrid plan until the week of October 5th. So the first 2 weeks, September 21st to October 2nd, the academic schedule will be the same with what I just shared with you, but everything's going to happen remotely. But then we are also going to provide time for grade level meetings. So almost a continuation of what happened at the orientation, where a grade level is coming in from 120 to 240. It will be an opportunity for you to meet with your grade level specific advisors. But then also we're going to be able to do some work with you from the guidance office and administrative office as well, just in terms of goals for the school year in terms of the grade level you're at. So for example, with grade 9, really providing that support on acclimating to high school, especially in kind of the different context of what it will look like. Grade 10, really trying to get into the work that we started last year at the grade 10 level, which is just really starting to explore what your interests are. And grade 11, really starting to think through, all right, the planning for time after, for when you graduate high school. And then grade 12, really an emphasis on providing the support for your applications. So whether or not you're applying to college or you're thinking about going into a career, so having that support there. And that'll be kind of the emphasis of those grade level meetings. And then ideally, what I would love to be able to do is pull together the full grade outside, socially distanced, so we could at least do a full grade level meeting as well. Would be fantastic. So with the student technology, so one thing I've put out in a bunch of the communications that have gone out in the past 2 weeks to families is this, that you do need to have a computer-like device. And I think we have about 70 students who have put in to come pick up a Chromebook. I think the pickup day is going to be next Monday for students to pick up their Chromebook who put in for that. But whether you have a Chromebook, a MacBook, or a laptop at home, and then obviously having earbuds or headphones if there's multiple of you at home, just to kind of keep things focused on you. And then also in school, it's really going to be the same thing. We are encouraging students to bring their own computer-like device. So if you do have a laptop type computer or a Chromebook, bring that with you. We will be able to issue students for the 2 days that they're in school their own Chromebook to carry with them from class to class. So that is possible, but we are encouraging students, so you don't have to deal with picking one up, that you are able to bring in your own device if you are able and have one. All right, so I am going to pass this off to Mr. Testa, who's going to get into the school building safety protocols.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. So, Mr. Wolf, we now have 108 total.
Oh, that's great.
So
perfect.
I think 4 of us are on the admin team, so 104 students, which is great. So thanks for joining us. My part's probably going to take, 12 minutes, 15 minutes. You're going to it'll be much more meaningful when you are here for the orientation days to actually see it and feel it and practice it. But this is probably a quick overview of probably our top 10 list in terms of things that are going to look and feel different that we've designed really since the closure, but really this late spring and throughout summer to help keep everybody in the building safe. And the top 10 list is the use of masks, wearing masks in the building, what the start of the school day is going to look like. And that includes two big things, the entry points and a self-wellness check. The setup, a traditional looking classroom. Mr. Wolf has some pictures in here too to give you some examples of now what classrooms look like. Start and end routines of every single class in terms of wrapping it up and sanitizing the desks. The passing time and how you're going to move from room to room in terms of directions in our hallways and stairwells. Occupancy limits in the bathrooms, what it's going to look like in the cafeteria, how we will dismiss at the end of the school day, and then how we have rethought our nurse's office, etc. So if Mr. Wolf, if you can head on to the one with masks, this is very important. And what we're asking your cooperation with is, first of all, that you bring not a buff or not a neck gaiter. Those are no longer acceptable, but it needs to be a two-layer cloth mask. If you show up at school accidentally without one, then we'd be happy to give you one of those disposable ones that you can wear for the day. If you are coming to school and not complying and just it's uncomfortable, you don't want to do it, you refuse to do it, then you'll just be learning from home. So it's a non-negotiable that you need to understand when it's your 2-day time to come to school for those 2 consecutive days, but that's the expectation. We have trained our teachers, and we will be working with you guys in terms of how to take an appropriate mask break. Because depending on the temperature in the building, and even if it is a nice cool day in your classroom, we understand, we get it. It can be uncomfortable to have to wear a mask for a long period of time, especially if you haven't built up some kind of a tolerance to it. You do get used to it, but it takes a bit of time. So Mr. Wolf, I think you have either a picture or a slide coming up. Do you still have that in there? So, right, no neck gaiters, so please come with a proper type of mask. We'll give you a mask if you forget one. Here we go. Mr. Wolf modeling for you.
Yes, so and this kind of just shows just how, like Mr. Testa was saying, there's going to be times where you do want to get a little bit of air underneath your mask. And so this is just a non-discreet way to be able to do this. Yeah, and so there we go. And so it's recognizing that there are appropriate ways for you to take a little bit of a break.
And what we want you to do is not get in the habit of like walking around with your mask and then pulling it down below your chin, right? So you have it on and you're doing this, and then you come around the corner and you see someone and it's back up. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is you should only be touching it by the loops that go over your ears as opposed to the cloth. So we'll talk more about that when the time comes closer and during orientation, and then certainly in the classrooms as the school year gets going. But that's a real important thing, and it's really part of the mindset of being responsible to help keep the whole school environment safe. So it's not just about taking steps to keep yourself safe, but everybody else that's in the building, the staff and the other students.
Right, and that's an important thing that Mr. Testa brings up, is that we all have a responsibility for that, maintaining everybody's safety and wellness and peace of mind. And the masks are a big deal. And so, we're going to be, really reinforcing that throughout the building. And this just are some examples of how not to get some air underneath the mask, because as Mr. Testa was saying is, what happens here is that the air from your mouth is getting onto your hands or your nose in the picture to the left there. And we'll be getting into this during the orientation days as well, but then obviously reinforcing it throughout the year. But it is pretty good how you do get very used. Last week I was doing a meeting that was virtual, and I just totally forgot, because you just get used to having the mask on. So you definitely can get acclimated to it. Very true.
All right, two things about the beginning of the school day. And they kind of go hand in hand, so I'll talk about them somewhat together. But when you arrive to the building, there's going to be two main points of entry, and there'll be staff at each of those two entry points. One is going to be right up at the front main entrance where the pillars are at our front door. The other one is going to be the lower door out by the dumpsters, which we call the loading dock entrance, so by the stadium side. You can arrive at either door, and when you arrive there, the reason why there are staff is because you need to show that you have completed this daily home symptom screen. So it's a very brief questionnaire that just gets you in the mindset of thinking, am I feeling okay today? Do I have any symptoms consistent with COVID? Do I have a fever? Do I feel lousy? And you'll answer those few questions. It's on a Google form, and it will show a green check mark if you've completed them and you're good to go. And you're going to show on your device that you have completed that. If you don't have a device, or if you just forgot to answer it, or if you answered it in the negative and it shows a red X, then you'd be escorted up into the health office for further evaluation and further screening. It's real easy. At the younger grades, from the knockdown, the parents are doing this every day. But at the high school, again, kind of like what we were talking about with the culture and wearing masks, is that now as young adults, we're expecting you to take some steps to kind of self-assess and self-monitor. And because you're not only responsible for yourself, but for everybody else around you, if you're not feeling well enough to come to school, then you might be feeling well enough to follow along virtually. So if you're not feeling good, you'd stay home. Then you'd participate in your classes online. The next one, Mr. Wolf, I think is about the points of entry. So another thing that's real different in terms of protocols is that for those of you that are returning high school students, you'll know that really the building was open very early and you could access the building really anytime you wanted. But now that's going to be restricted until 20 minutes before the first class. With our later start time, we are beginning classes at 8:15. And so students will be allowed to enter the building through those 2 points of entry as early as 7:55, but not before then, right up until just the beginning of the school day. When you enter, though, you're going to come in and just go to class. We are going to serve breakfast. So if you're a student that purchases breakfast, there'll be a small number of seats where you can sit down in the caf and eat there. But otherwise, we just unfortunately can't have the same, which was nice before. You'd meet up with your friends, you kind of walk laps, kids would congregate in the caf, even if they weren't eating. So again, that idea of being distanced and just going to where it's spaced out and the desks are spaced out in the classroom. So when you enter the building, the expectation is that you're going to go to your first period class. Coming up next is an example of what a typical classroom setup looks like right now. So the desks and the chairs are 6 feet apart. You're going to notice it's approximately half as many student desks as were in each classroom previously. So because we've cohorted by half the alphabet, most of our classes fit in. There were some where just the way the roster broke down are over. So we're doing some room adjustments so that we can make sure all the classes fit in a larger room. Some classrooms fit 11 desks, some fit 15. It depends on the shape and size of the classrooms. In terms of the start and end of class, Mr. Wolf showed a example bell schedule, and in that bell schedule, there's going to be 10 minutes in between each of our classes starting. That's for passing time, but it's also for time for the sanitizer to dry. So at the end of each class, the teachers will be wrapping up their lessons a little early to build in time for this protocol. And the teachers will have this sanitizer in each classroom called Force of Nature. And they'll walk up and down the row and they'll give a light mist to each of the student desks. You don't need to wipe it down. You're going to be leaving the room a few minutes later and then going to your next class. By the time you get to the next class, it will probably be dry because it only requires a very, very fine mist. But if it is still a little bit damp, there'll be a roll of paper towels on a desk right on the inside of each classroom door, and you could just wipe down your desk if need be. In terms of getting class to class, I believe our next topic is the directions to our stairwells and our hallways. Again, for returning students, this will look a bit different. We have 4 floors at the high school. There's the basement level where we have art classes and our gym wellness classes. And there's music and some video production. The basement and the main floor where the office and the library and the caf, some other spaces are, guidance and the nurse. Those 2 levels are really like a horseshoe shape where you really can't connect fully around. But the second floor and the third floor, where most of our classroom spaces are, they make a complete loop. So for those 2 purposes, as well as because of the width of these hallways, the basement level and the first floor will be 2-way directional hallways. The second floor and the third floor, where most of our classrooms are, you'll only be leaving classes or getting off the stairwell and going counterclockwise around the building. But with 10 minutes in between classes, you'll have plenty of time to get there. Even if you exit a classroom and you only need to go a few doors down, you need to go the right direction. We have 2 stairwells that are dedicated to go up and 2 stairwells dedicated to go down. Last week, we had a company come to the high school and install a lot of visuals to kind of help us with the flow of traffic around. You'll see that one that says 2-way traffic, stay right. Those are on the floor tiles on the basement level and on the main floor. You can see that photograph with that down arrow hanging from the ceiling tiles will kind of help us keep track of which stairwells are up and which stairways are down. I think there might be more images. Yeah, so bathroom, there's going to be maximum occupancy. We have 16 student restroom in the high school. There's 4 per floor. So 4 in the basement, 4 on the main floor, etc. The ones that are up near all the classrooms on the second and third floor are significantly smaller. So those have a 2-person maximum occupancy. So if you show up and you're the third person, we have a place for you to stand and wait. There's that circular footprint dot. That's about maybe a foot wide. And we have 2 or 3 of them stationed on, they're stuck down on the floor tiles, more than 6 feet apart from one another, almost like you'd be in line waiting your turn. So the basement and the main floor can have 3 students as a maximum occupancy. So that would be the ones, the bathrooms in the caf and the ones closer to the auditorium, as well as the 2 sets down in the lower level because they're larger. No students will be, staff won't be using the bathroom in the nurse's office. There's 2 single stall restrooms there. I'll talk a little bit more about rethinking the nurse's office when we get there. So a couple other things to go through first. There's another example of some signage that's all around. There's these big signs that's, I don't know, about 2 feet tall or 1.5 feet tall. There's 36 signs with various messages like remembering to wash your hands, remembering to maintain social distance, wear a mask to enter the building. Just a lot of messages that we want you to keep in your mind. So signs came out really great. Cafeteria, this is a big one. So Mr. Wolf mentioned that we're going to have 3 lunches. And the reason for that is that even with the cohorts that we've designed, we will have approximately 200 students in the building at a time. And with 200 students, it was still just a little too tight to have 2 lunches only. Now, in the past, we'd have at least 250 to 280 students crammed in the cafeteria and in the courtyard and in room 118. But now, Mr. Wolf, if you can switch to the photograph of the caf, this is what the cafeteria looks like. We have gotten rid of the big round tables, and it's going to be individual student desks. They're all facing the courtyard. If you're not familiar with the shape of the caf, it's kind of like a wedge shape where it gets wider. So this would be down at the narrow end looking towards room 118 and the wider end. So the rows get longer and longer. I think we fit about 60 students in the caf, and there's more chairs over in room 118. Room 118, this photograph is taken from the hallway side. That used to be all the cabinet space and some old trophy cabinets there. So that was opened up pre-COVID. This was in the design, and that big square window in the background just to allow some light from the caf into 118. The carpet was taken out, and there was another countertop you can just make out on the far side of that image. So we designed this last spring, or really last winter, to accommodate for more students in our lunches. We're still going to use it for lunch, just it'll be individual desks once again. If the weather's good, we certainly want to allow for outdoor eating and as much as possible, because obviously during lunch is your longest mask break of the day, which is why the desks need to be at least 6 feet apart. So we'll use the courtyard, and we'll also be using the terrace out back, out behind the cafeteria, which overlooks the stadium. Dismissal. At the end of the school day, we're going to be dismissing by floors, even with only 200 students in the building. We just don't want to have a logjam of students, because there'll only be 2 stairwells going down and 2 going up, and we'll have you exit out of the building. Mr. Hodson will talk about after-school activities and athletics later, but we just don't want to have a situation where we have 100 students kind of congregating out by the front steps or out by the stadium or out by the gym exit. So we'll stagger those just by a minute or two. You can stay for extra help by appointment after school. And the last thing is the nurse's office. The student health office. We have 2 full-time nurses at the high school. There had been, you might not know, 2 other support staff that were in there, a school counselor and a secretary, and they were relocated to other spaces so that we could rethink the health office. It's essentially going to be a well visit side and a I'm not feeling good, I need to be evaluated side. If there's anyone exhibiting COVID-like symptoms, there is an isolation room, which had been one of those staff members' office spaces previously. If you are not feeling well and you need to be picked up, a parent or guardian will be notified, and then the sick student would exit by the stairwell closest to the scoreboard, one of the same entries and exits that we'll use. So it's down by the yoga studio down in the basement. So you'd head out that way. Then the parent would come and pick you up over in that side parking lot. Let's see. I'll let you hop into that one, Mr. Wolf.
Okay. So with this here, so there is the possibility, for when we have students in school, that we may get a call in the afternoon that a student had wound up getting a test and the test came back positive. And so, I mean, that's just the potential reality, but it still doesn't mean that we're not safe. And so that's really where this contact tracing comes into play. And again, it's why the importance of everybody wearing the masks and why we've set up the rooms the way we've set them up. But what we are doing is in working with the health professionals in Newburyport and how the CDC defines a close contact is any person who is within 6 feet of distance of a positive case for at least 15 minutes. And so all of your teachers, when you're in the classroom, you're going to have assigned seats. And with that, so if administratively we get a call that a student was in our building who wound up testing positive, then we'll be able to communicate to those teachers of that student and then get the seating plan so that we can also notify the other students that were in that 6 foot distance radius of the student, so they could be notified. And then they would have the option of getting tested, more so for peace of mind. Right now, the guidance that we have, and this was asked by a parent last Thursday, because right now the guidance is if you are a close contact that you would be self-quarantining for 14 days. But the question was, if the child does get tested and they come back negative, do they have to stay out for the 14 days? So we did float that up to our health department, but once we get more clarification on that, but one thing that I can confirm is that anybody who is considered a close contact, there will be constant consultation with our nursing team as well. So to help make decisions on when to come in or when you're ready. And then I do have a slide here that is from the district's safety plan that really gives families and students and teachers kind of clear guidance on what to do in terms of coming into the building or not based off of different situations. So this just kind of gives you the idea. So if we are notified of a student and or a teacher, then anybody who is determined to be a close contact would be notified to stay out. And then anybody who was in the class, even if you were not considered a close contact, would still be notified, and we would notify the whole school as well, just so everybody was in the know. And then our teachers, even though they may not have been a close contact, the district, in working with some of the health professionals in Newburyport, had purchased antigen testing, so that a teacher would be able to get tested right away. So then this is the table that I was referring to, and then this is in the health protocols for the district, and just gives the 3 main scenarios. So whether or not you're feeling symptomatic at home, and so kind of gives you guidance in terms of what to do, and then when you would be able to come back. And then if you start to become symptomatic when you are in school, and that's why Mr. Testa was talking about the new setup in the nurse's office, so that if a student does start to exhibit, or a staff member starts to exhibit COVID-like symptoms during the day, that they can be isolated in an area of the nurse's office until the parent or guardian comes to pick them up. And then there's also guidance just in terms of what to do if you are exposed or considered really a close contact to somebody who had tested positive for COVID-19. And so this is really a great resource, and it's right in the health protocols from the district. Okay, and then I know there's been questions just in regards to what will result in the school closure, and really it comes down to a lot of factors, and this is more of our the health professionals for the school system and within the city, really just constantly monitoring data and whether or not there seems to be an increase in cases within the city, or if there seems to be an outbreak in the building. Those are different things that could result in school closure. But I do want to emphasize, if a student does, or somebody does test positive, it doesn't necessarily mean the building needs to close. And that's really the whole idea behind the contact tracing. The goal is to maintain our safety protocols and be able to keep things going as we have planned. And ideally, as the year continues, trying to increase students coming to the building. And that was also a question that the school committee is really looking into. What are the parameters so that, we can, and when, increase students coming to the building, especially if everything is going very well with everybody following our safety protocols, and the cases in Newburyport continue to remain low, so that we can get to a point of increasing student access to the building. So I know the school committee with the health professionals, that is something that they are exploring, so that we can get that guidance, so that decision could be made ideally at some point. But then even there, if you are a student who's coming in for the initial part of the plan because you feel like it's more safe, than if we were increasing, students coming into the building. The idea is that we're keeping students that are at home working alongside the students that are on site. That can be an option. So if you're a student that had decided to start with the hybrid plan the way it is, but then you feel like if we move to a more 50% or greater, you could have the option of, going with the remoting into the classrooms as well. So just so you understand that you don't have to feel nervous that if we are increasing student access, that now X's you out. All right, and I think we have Mr. Hodgson here somewhere to talk about what's happening with athletics.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. It's good to be back here again as we get closer to the opening of school and the opening of our fall athletic season. There's still a lot of moving parts, but we're getting closer. I spoke to the school committee last week and updated them on our plan and the plan of the league, at least how we think it's going to happen. You may be aware that the MIA has moved the sports season to 4 seasons, and we've moved football and cheer to the wedge season, which is February and March. I know I mentioned that the last time we spoke. Volleyball is still very much up in the air, whether it will happen in this traditional fall season, or whether that will be moved to the wedge season as well because of the indoor playing area that's needed. So as of right now, we are planning on hosting boys and girls soccer and field hockey and cross country and golf. So that's our plan. How it's going to look, we're not quite sure yet, but that's not for you to worry about. If you're an athlete, and you should spend the next week and a half training as you have been, hopefully, and planning on starting on September 18th. More information will be sent home in the next day or two to parents, a letter maybe outlining a little bit more information. We're having weekly meetings with athletic directors and school league principals and trying to come up with concrete answers. So we're slowly getting our number of approved schools in the league up. There are still 5 out of the 11 that need school committee approval because they are remote schools. So we won't find that out until next week. So we're not going to know what your schedule is going to be like until probably the first day of practice. But again, you don't have to worry about that. When you're supposed to play a game, you show up to play a game. When you practice, you practice. But that's also going to look a little bit different. And I can explain that when you come in for our live meeting next week. You know, the locker rooms are not going to be available this year at all. The training room's not going to be available. It's going to look more like a youth sport where you show up prepared, dressed, and play. So we'll figure all that out. If you're in school and you need to change and so forth, it's really, as you can imagine with anything right now, it's a work in progress, and we're trying to figure out what's going to work best. And ultimately, we want to have a safe environment, let you play in games that are safe. When we schedule games with opponents, we're going to schedule them in pods or cohorts. And for example, if we're playing Pentucket in soccer on Wednesday, we would be playing them in field hockey on Tuesday, and maybe cross country and golf right around that way as well. So that's for contact tracing. So that's really where we're at. Another good thing in the stadium and in the gym this year is we're going to have all events, varsity and JV, televised live. So people, if you have relatives who live out of state, or if they can't attend the game, they could actually watch from the laptop or their phone or television. So that's something that's pretty cool. And we're trying to get all of the KPN League teams and schools to do that, which would make it, we'll really promote our league and promote our sports program. So that's where we're at. You will get something from me soon. Our parents will. But as far as you go, we're going to be doing impact testing with Bree Ferrulo, our trainer, as we've done in the past. She'll be contacting you. That's for concussions. You're going to need an updated physical. Mrs. Cutter if you've registered online, Mrs. Cutter is checking all of that right now. So if you have not registered for a sport, that would be pretty important to do because that's how we generate our list. And when we say we start next week, we start like next Friday is the first official practice. So a lot is going to happen in the next week. We have an athletic director meeting here tomorrow, and we'll hopefully find out more about the league as well. So you can email me if you have individual questions, and you will be getting something from me before the end of the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hodgson. All right, so that's the presentation. So I think now we can take some questions, and I think I saw somebody raise their hand. Oliver? I think. Maybe not. How about Autumn?
Hi, so I was just wondering if we're choosing to do all remote, including for orientation, will there be an opportunity for us to pick up our materials?
Yes, we're actually, so Miss Blackstock and you're going to be assigned an advisor, which is going to be Miss Leadbeater and Mr. Nesson. And so they're going to be planning an orientation for all students who would be working remotely. And then we'd have that plan for you to come and pick up your materials as well. Thank you, Autumn. Other questions? Jillian.
I have a question about, so if I'm from A to Okay. Will I ever see the people that are not and that are L to Z?
So that's one of the, so unfortunately, as of right now, the way it works, no. But I think what we're looking to do, so with those grade level meetings that we're gonna run during the 2 weeks that we are remote, I am looking to see how we can try to make that happen. So ideally trying to get a full grade level to come in so that we can at least do some grade level work.
Okay. Is there anything online that we're going to be doing with the other letter?
Oh yeah, because you're going to be in your classes with your full class. So if you
Okay.
have, for example, you know, your social studies class, you're going to be, if it's your time to be at home, you'll be Googling in. So you'll be part of that whole entire class.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, we have Hannah.
Hi. So when we're in person for the 3 lunch blocks, how will we know which one we're in?
So just like, oh, you want to answer that, Mr. Testa?
I'll be putting a schedule out to all the teachers. It will be a little bit more complex than normal, just because like on the first day in, when you're in person, it's your C block class, and then it'll be your G block class the next day. So we're working on that. There's a little flexibility that they don't have to be perfectly balanced because we do have the 3 lunches. So I'll send a list out to teachers, and teachers will let you know when it's your in-person day, whether it's the C block class that you have or the G block.
Right, and that'll also impact the students at home as well, because the class
Right.
would do its lunch at the same time. The first 2 weeks of school, so we'll just have the one lunch block because everybody will be doing their academics remote, and then it just makes it easier for students who it's their time to come in for their grade level meetings to be able to come to the building. But then once we do start more of the hybrid model, is when we'll shift to the 3 lunches, but it'll be the teachers letting you know this is our assigned lunch block. Kelly?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Hannah.
I was just wondering, are buses running this year, or has that been determined yet?
So we are still waiting for that confirmation. I know district is working on it, and I think what was shared at the school committee meeting last Wednesday, that any person who had registered for a bus, even at the high school, that the transport company might be able to make that happen. So we haven't had the solid confirmation yet, but it does sound like for high school students, that could be a go. We're also, but we reached out to see about the possibility of the transportation for the grade level meeting, so that doesn't look as promising. But it does sound like for when it's your turn to come to the building, if you had signed up for transportation, that busing could be there. But I think this week we'll get the final confirmation that they were able to make it work. They did have to prioritize K through 8, because I guess at the high school level, the district does not need to provide transportation, but they are trying to make it happen, especially realizing that some students live out on Plum Island. That's pretty far. Ross?
Hello. Is there any system for people outside the bathrooms to determine how many people are inside them? So, like, is there any like counter that shows that's installed outside the bathroom to tell how many people are inside?
No, we do not have that in place. We are considering if we're able to put a block in the door just to keep the doors slightly ajar so that you can have a visual if it does look like there's 2 people in the bathroom. But right now it might just be opening up the door and you see 2 people there. And then we do have spacers out in the hallway that you are able to socially distance if there were a line.
And previously, students were told that to use bathrooms on the same floor that their classes were. But let's say the bathrooms on your floor were filled at max capacity. Are you now allowed to go to different floors to use the restroom?
Oh, I think that, yeah, because your goal is to try to get back to class as fast as you can.
Right,
So I
thank you.
get that. Yeah, you'd be able to go down to the next level to use the restroom. And also early on, Mr. Testa and I, we plan to be in those hallways, especially during the academic times, just to help manage that and so that we can get into a flow of things as well. But students will be signing out of their classes just so that the teacher has a log for when student goes to the bathroom, which is, I think, similar to what we had done before in the past. Any other questions? Great questions. Give it a minute. Oh, Jillian?
Yeah, I have another question. So, for the hybrid plan, when is the next like meeting to see when that changes? Like, I know we're not going into it until the next 2 weeks from school starts. And when will that be like reevaluated, like later in the year? Will it be like January or?
Oh, no, I think it's gonna, I know the school committee in working with Mr. Gallagher is trying to come up with some parameters that would allow us to potentially just give us direction in terms of increasing. So I get the sense it would probably be really reevaluating it come mid-October.
Okay.
So which still gives it gives us several weeks to get adjusted to all the different protocols with a quarter of the students in the building at a time. But we'll see. We're gonna go off of whatever parameters that we're given. But obviously any shift, you know, we want to be able to give everybody at least 2 weeks to be aware of it as well. So that's an important part is also.
Thank you.
Thought I saw, Ross, did you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm set.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right, well, I do want to say now, obviously you do not hesitate to reach out to Mr. Testa, Mr. Hodgson, me, or Ms. Blackstock. Ms. Blackstock did have another meeting this morning that she was a part of, so she was on at the very beginning. So obviously if you have any scheduling questions, you can reach out to her. But any logistical questions, Mr. Testa or I, and then obviously with athletics would be Mr. Hodgson. So I do want to say thank you. I am we cannot wait to see many of you next week for the orientations, just so we can get this launched. But ultimately trying to bring some level to the best that we can of normalcy to the situation that we're trying to move forward with. Oh, Jillian?
Yeah, sorry, I have one more question. So on our schedules, I only have one elective, but so how many electives will I have this year?
So is it just for the first, are you looking at the first semester?
Yeah.
I would think you would probably wind up with 2 electives across the school year. Because usually where you have an elective for the first semester, it's filled with another elective the second semester.
It didn't show me that. It showed me the same elective. Well, I looked at a couple other people's, and it was the same thing.
Oh, okay. My recommendation is just reach right out to your guidance counselor, just to make sure that you didn't miss out on a class.
Okay.
Because I think there were some every year, I think when the schedules go out, there are sometimes it's not caught that a student may have a blank in their schedule. So I would definitely just connect with whomever your guidance counselor is, Jillian.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. Thank you very much. And we will see you next week.
Thank you. See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Maple.
Bye, everybody.